All good things in life must come to an end. If you guys didn't already know, Fradardo has stated on his server that he won't be doing drawings anymore. And as Fradardo's official collaborator, I had to step into the studio one last time. So join me on this very passionate adventure as we look through some more official pressings of Fradardo's wife. So the first one we have here is one of a few different variations of Aurora. It seems that my video clearing up the misunderstanding between Ruby and Aurora really made Aurora more popular or something. However, this specific render right here has to be the best one. I believe it's the shading that makes it look so nice. And on top of that, we can admire Aurora for her 3921 4D shape. Our follower up here is yet another render of Aurora, high up in the front and way down in the back. However, is it just me or has her thighs got 10 times bigger in this one? Now this next one is yet another Aurora pressing, which came with 3 different variations. Up front we got the original one. In this one she's wearing one of those red tracksuit things and has a little bouquet of roses, I suppose. This next one is her in her original clothing. However, my favorite one has to be this third one. I just like this dark red / pinkish color, and it really makes those roses stand out more than the others. Up next we have Bianca, and well, there's not really too much lore behind her character. However, it is rumored that she is the antagonist in the manga. And with that, we can only imagine how much wicked witchcraft she could really perform. Up next we have this guy, and surprisingly, this isn't the first time we've seen of this guy.
Oh my god!
However, unfortunately, at this point in time, I don't. Up next here we have this Brute render, which is actually a reference to this promotional image of Angry Birds Epic. It will most likely be used in a mod or something. Up next here we have this book. Yes, you heard me. The book. Otherwise known as the Pig-slopedia. To be honest, this might be a further reference that I'm unaware of. One that one could not even fathom of understanding. Maybe Fradardo's ahead of his time. But how are we to know? How are we ever to know? Next up we have here is Roan and Bonnie. Now when I saw this was on Fradardo's agenda, I had to come up with some sort of scheme. So I explained exactly what I had in mind. Everything was fine and dandy until right about here. I mentioned the bra size is a solid double. Obviously, I didn't reread my message before I sent that. And well, the final result was this. Now what actually did I mean by solid double? Well, you see, I originally had intended to write double A. This meaning that her breast size wasn't too big and wouldn't become the main focus of her character. However, due to my blunder, this obviously wasn't the case and we got these. But to be completely honest, she's not really wearing much. Not only this, but she seems to be wearing something similar to a joke I made on a server. You see, there's more lore to this than you think. Believe it or not, but Fradardo actually read my mind. If you look really closely at this bra device, you can see that we have something on the neck. This is held up by a golden ring. Now, I don't know if you guys know Avon, you need to stop pestering me, eyes party. He quite frequently makes appearances in my videos. Oh, I'm scared.
And I'm getting ready. Crap, I'm gone.
Let's go.
You won.
However, if you know him like I do, he has a tendency to make Discord servers that he says we plan to use a lot for stuff, but then ends up immediately dying. But this one server he made recently called the Vampire Roleplay coming this 2025 Halloween Minecraft, I really tried to make sure this didn't die, and although it did, I had probably the most greatest time coming up with all this stuff. But the important part I came to talk about here was the official art for the bus driver. Notice anything similar? Oh yes, that's right. It's the same design. I don't know how anyone even knew about this. The fact that he knew that's what I was using to depict bus drivers and then applied onto me It's just some crazy activities I would have never expected. Fridardo knew what he was doing the whole time, and he stopped at nothing to get his point across. However, nonetheless, I had to beat the odds, so I used the Challenger Princess's suit along with this other skirt, and I began working my magic to create a version with clothes, really. And after many different modifications, I have came up with this. A new look to an already new drawing, while also maintaining its key elements. And genuinely, we won't have to do any more thinking or speaking, because Fridardo has given us lore. He has given us card with information about these characters. So up first here, we have the main character, Ruby, which going off this information, we know now that she is 21, the most popular girl, always patient and sometimes naughty. Then we have Mia, and the thing that's interesting about this is, well, I kind of already gave out her lore before her lore was even out, which I find quite crazy if you think about it. And up next we have Amelia. Hot, blonde, and French, the three best things. Now if there's one thing I had to question, is what that render is. Unless I'm not thinking straight, I don't believe a full render has ever been seen with this picture before. And up next we have here is Sabo. Who could go wrong with a stronger and sexier sister? Up next here we have Hannah and... oh, I never stood a chance. Now some very crucial lore comes with Melina. Apparently she's Aurora's cousin. And to be honest, I can't say I recognize this render either. And up next here we have Aurora, which is 29 years old. And knowing that she's been a Ferrari since she was 5 years old, we can only imagine how good she rides. But it'd probably come at a hefty price. Getting to the final few here, we have another render of Bianca. A standard pose with a lot of meaning. And next up we have here is another render of Aurora. And I never knew what to think about this. You see, this pose is humanly impossible, because as you can see here, her head and her collar implies that we're looking at the back of her body. However, this can't be the back of her body because her chest is like in the back. Not to mention, her whole lower body is, well, also in the back. Now last but not least, we have this image right here. All you have to do is screenshot and you will find one of many Fridardo masterpieces. However, someone managed to find this unreleased pressing after my head just processed it. You see, along with those cards with information, we did have Anna, which was before Fridardo had made that original message, which means this probably already existed. However, the original render wasn't released. And this could be said with those other ones as well. Now, like any good work of poetry, I shall recite the very first line of this very video. All good things in life must come to an end. However, is this the end, or is this just the beginning?